I bet you most people, even those of you that have been following, the conspiracy for a while, probably aren't really aware of the Alfalfa Club, and it's very difficult. That is of the elite of the elites in politics, government, media, and academia and business. Okay, 200 limited to 200 members, invite only. They only have a new member when an old member dies. I'm like, why that kind of secrecy? Why that kind of eliteness if it's simply to celebrate the birthday of a Confederate general? And so it just didn't make sense. And so I just kept digging and digging and digging. And finally, I came across, again, in a university archive, a book published in 1918. And so I was able to read their autobiography, what they say about themselves, why they were created. And they call themselves the oldest secret society in existence.
All right, you guys. Ben McClintock has strong roots in the Liberty movement. He is the founder as well as membership coordinator and investigative reporter for Tree of Liberty Society, organizing efforts to defy state mandates and shutdowns during the fake pandemic. Prior to that, he was a coordinator at the John Birch Society. He has been featured in USA Today, Fox News, and many other regional newspapers. He is a popular guest and regularly appears on radio programs. Ben also recently co-produced a popular documentary, Romans 13, Must Christians Obey the Government? Among many others, which can be viewed here on the Tree of Liberty website. With over 20 years experience in original research, writing, speaking, and organizational leadership, Ben strives to bring a strong foundation and understanding of freedom to Tree of Liberty Society and all of its members. Ben and his family reside in the Mountain West, spending much of their time in Utah. I want you guys to go over and check out his boot camp, Our Liberty Boot Camp. The link is down below. And also Invasion Books. Yes, you guys, he's got a book out there, Tree of Liberty Service or Tree of Liberty Society.com. Brother Ben, how are you there?
Fantastic. So good to be with you, Jesse.
Oh, good to be with you too. And I'm going to put your right here at the bottom, Tree of Liberty Society.com. I don't know why I'm having trouble saying that, but it's a lot of words there. And I know you've been there in the green room watching me get my way through what I was talking to in the intro right there. Usually Outcast is here and he's, we're going back and forth and shooting the thoughts back and forth. So tonight it's you. So
sounds good.
Ben, let's get on with Tree of Liberty Society.com and everything. Tell us about what you're doing. What is all this about?
Yeah. So, and I think it's important for us to get into that. Let me grab. So you talked about all these different groups out there. On the cover of the book, Invasion, we have this Leviathan, because this isn't like different conspiracies. These are different tentacles of the same conspiracy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of crossover. We see different organizations, Skull and Bones, which we'll talk about. You have the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, Bohemian Grove. These aren't different because, again, we have the crossover of people that are involved in all those groups, but they are just different tentacles, different arms of the same conspiracy so that they can more effectively get the job done. And these are, again, documented facts. And it's important for us not to just know about these things, but to do something about it. I mentioned in the beginning in the introduction about how we didn't just expose the fake pandemic. We got people involved and engaged in resisting it. Immediately when the governors said, okay, you can't have meetings of people, groups more than 10 people, we went to state capitals and we had groups of people. We said, okay, we're going to go to the state capitol and we're going to have a picnic right there at the feet of the governors, at the seat of government. And we had dozens of people come up. It was in the beginning, people were still scared, but we said, you know what? Even if this is real, the government doesn't have the authority to do this. We're not going to let them get away with this. And now we understand how fake everything really was. And then when they shut down businesses, we looked for businesses that said, you know what you're doing, government, is illegal. We're going to resist. We're going to do what the founding fathers said, and we're going to nullify illegal actions. And so we found a business that said, we're willing, with your support, we're willing to open up during the lockdown. And so we were able to get a business, one of the only restaurants in town that would actually open up, and we filled it in a couple of hours with 300 people saying we're not going to go along with these illegal acts of the government. And so resistance is very much important, but we don't know what to resist if we don't understand the conspiracy. And so that's why I wrote volumes 1 and 2 of Invasion, which show, because as again in the beginning remarks, you talked about how our local communities, you have Agenda 2030 being implemented in cities. Well, we don't have UN troops marching down Main Street, USA, but our local leaders on the city, on the county, and even on the state level, they are turning us over. They don't need to invade because we're being turned over by our leaders. And so for a long time, studying about this international conspiracy and how it works, but I wondered how was it being implemented on the local level? And so that led me to just a deep dive in looking at university archives, state archives, religious institutional archives all over the country, to be able to get actual data that you can't just find on a Google search, to see how these organizations reach their hands deep into local communities. And so that's what Invasions Volume 1 and 2 is all about, and laying that foundation and using, because just Utah was a really good example. And so we used it as not really a test case, but as an example of how it works everywhere. We said, here's the data. Here's how it happened here. Because if you can get a so-called conservative state like Utah to have a governor that, I think it was Forbes, or was it the New York Times, said was a proud woke governor. If a yeah. state that prouds itself on being constitutional, being family-centered, and being for limited government, how do we get that in our state? And so really focusing on that, and then showing, no matter where you're at in the country, how the same thing happened in your community. And so we've actually been able to dig in many, many other states, and then we show people how to dig in their own states, how this happens. And then we've got some examples of some national organizations and how they infiltrate into local communities as well, which we'll talk about. Skull and Bones. I don't want to, just kind of an intro. I don't know if you have any questions or want to direct us in a certain way with that intro.
Well, going back to this whole scam,
monopolize the conversation. I apologize.
Oh no, that's good. It's a good back and forth. So you were talking about your governor and your so-called, state of Utah, being so-called conservative, which I believe it is 100%. Most of the state or country, or most of the states in the country are. The problem is we have a couple of counties that seem to rule the rest of the state, and we have a few of those like-minded, well, not like-minded to us, but like-minded to each other. These leftists in charge. Okay. The leftist brain think in charge. And now, what was the pushback that you got when you guys decided not to follow these mandates? And here's another thing too, you guys, mandates are not law. Recommendations are not law. Opinions are not law. And that's all they were doing, is putting these kinds of things. Hey, you better go do this. You better wear a mask. You better do. Nope. I didn't do any of that crap. And they hated me for that. All over the place. Anyway, so what was the pushback that you were getting? Yeah. From your local officials, were you getting pushback? What about law enforcement? How'd they handle this stuff?
So, some of it was in your face, and some of it was more behind the scenes. One of the times we got mothers maskless shopping. And so we went to several different grocery stores, and we refused to wear masks. Yeah. And so a lot of the stores, they just were like, hey, we're just leave us alone. And then there was one store that is local. It's not going to be, most of your viewers won't know of it, but they called the cops on us. And it was, a big thing where they were threatening to arrest us for daring to have mothers go shopping without a face diaper on them. And so, it's a little bit back and forth. I've done some other investigations that have had other pushback. We've showing how all three branches of government are involved in protecting satanic ritual abuse, looking at the Franklin cover-up back in Nebraska, and then also one in the state of Utah, a network that was exposed. And then we looked deeper into it and showed how every branch of government was involved and in protecting those involved in it, which leads one to believe that that's, a part of, they're probably a part of it. If that's the case,
Yeah.
you don't really defend people and protect them if you're not a part of it. And then there was other legislation that we exposed that was taking away powers from the sheriff. And so with all of this, some of the pushback has been trying to specifically silence me. And so an example, one weekend, the sheriff's department blocked my driveway with a DUI checkpoint. So if I wanted to leave my property or come home, I had to go through their DUI checkpoint. About a year after that, my house burns down and the fire department shows up and refuses to put it out. And then they refuse to do an investigation into the cause of it. A couple years after that. No, it's crazy. Totally legal.
Oh my gosh, Ben. So what was your recourse? I mean, did you take anybody to lawsuits? I mean, did you sue anybody? What is it still going on?
They were all just, it was just all shuffled and they just all said, oh, no, nothing we can do about it. And the same thing with the next thing that happened is they attempted to kidnap at the time she was 5 years old, my 5-year-old daughter. She was diagnosed with leukemia and I dared to look at alternative treatments and they said, you're not allowed to do that. We're going to take her away from you. And so what we did was we plastered all over social media, on local radio, and a bunch of other places, his personal cell phone number. And so within a day, he gives me a call back and says, we are dropping all the charges. We have no evidence against you. Even though the day before in the affidavit, he claimed with they've never seen her, never met her, never talked to her, that he witnessed starving her and not allowing her to have water. And so I said, that is, you've clearly committed perjury on an official government document.
Mm-hmm.
And both the county attorney and the local sheriff's department both said that they're allowed to do that. They have qualified immunity. They can lie under oath on a government document in the pursuance of their job.
No way. Is that legal?
And so, well, I mean, it's not legal, but it's, they're the
one. It might be legal, but it's not lawful, right?
We're going to prosecute. What's that?
It might be legal, but it's not lawful.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then about a year ago, the sheriff's department, again, they issued a no-knock raid on my home. If I hadn't have been outside, I think divine providence put that into play to kind of calm things down. If they just barged in my house with a no-knock warrant, I might be dead. A local lawyer thought that it was probably an assassination attempt to try and shut me up.
Yeah.
He reached out to me and he wanted to look at the affidavit. He wanted to look at the warrant. And after looking at the warrant, he said the warrant was completely illegal, and it was full of made up, clearly things that are not illegal, and that it was signed off claiming that I was a big drug guy, that I was growing meth and weed and mushrooms. When I just had a 3D printing, I had one 3D printer in a bedroom, and they used that to claim that I was a big drug kingpin. And so this lawyer that had no connection to me looked through all the evidence and said, it is clear that they are trying to shut you up. And so just, it's essential that people that like what we're doing come over and support what we're doing, so that way they don't win, that they don't shut us up, and that we're allowed to continue to investigate and to expose and to engage people in resistance that actually works, following the example of the founding fathers.
This is so infuriating to me. Just like Music Lover said over here on the Rumble, she says, wow, sounds like some of the J6 and Ruby Ridge folks. That's exactly what it sounds like. Sounds
Waco,
like
that stuff.
Waco, the Gretchen Whitmer stuff here in Michigan. It's the same kind of crap, and they're trying to pin stuff on people. It never ends. It never ends. I remember watching that Waco stuff way back in the 90s under Clinton.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, man. So okay, so is all that done and free and clear, or is any of that still happening?
Yeah, I mean, all of that stuff just moves on, and it's just this regular every 1 to 2 year harassment to try and get me to go away.
Now, are some of these people, like the sheriff, is he still in office?
He is, correct.
So the same sheriff, so basically the same local officials, they won their re-elections or whatever, and they're still in office.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So what do the local townsfolk think about what's happening, about you and in the situation?
Well, of course, the local media is not going to cover it, so it's whatever is on what I've been able to expose
Yeah,
at treeoflibertysociety.com. And so most of them don't even know that it happened, because if it's not on the news, it didn't happen.
exactly. Oh man. Okay. Well, luckily we have alternate media, right? Alternative media sources out
Exactly.
here. Um,
Exactly.
you know what you just said there, Ben. If they didn't talk about it, it didn't happen. You know where that happened for our whole lifetimes growing up? That was back before social media, when you just had 2, 4, and 7.
Oh, yeah.
If Walter Cronkite didn't say it, it didn't happen. They were able to sneak a lot of things through. You know, back in those days, they were able to sneak so many things through, and now people are going back, looking at these things, reevaluating all the facts, looking at the facts that never got into those stories back then, and everything's being exposed. And that's what we talk about here. You know, what is it? Do not participate in the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. That's our Ephesians 3:16, I believe. And that's what we like to do on the show, because it's too much of that that evil darkness over us all these years in our lifetime. I'm sick of it. I hate it. And it visited you and your family. Oh, that's the worst, Ben.
It's time to shout it from the rooftops. We got to get this stuff out there.
Yeah.
So that way people stop treating these criminals, these satanic criminals, as legitimate leaders when they are not. They are illegitimate invaders according to natural law that deserve zero respect and zero obedience to their authority.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you 100% anymore. You know, that's 100% nailed it. So, wow. So you came through all of that. Your family, I mean, I'm sure they had to be, you know, paranoid and, you know, going through all these months, you know. And
sure.
I couldn't imagine it. I mean,
I've got another young daughter that was there watching all this go down, and as the SWAT team leaves the home, they look down at her about to cry. This 5-year-old little girl about to cry because these invaders have come into their home and into her home, and they look at her and they say, "You know, we're the good guys, right?" And so, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, Dad knows what he's talking about. You know, starts to really reinforce the truth of everything that I've been able to teach them.
You know, like when you just said that, you know, we're the good guys, right? You ever walk by a TV and they have all those, you know, Friday night FBI shows on and CIA shows on, and they're always the heroes in those shows, aren't they?
Yep.
They're never the ones that are caught doing the bad things. They're always the ones that come in and save the day. Isn't that funny? But you get these real stories, real in real life out on the ground level, and it's the opposite of that. It's just enough to drive you nuts, man. It's just, I'm glad you got out there and exposed.
Everyone, you know, they don't like competition, and so like a lot of them are involved in organized crime, and so when they go after a drug dealer or something, it's usually because it's competition as opposed to actually trying to protect the community.
I got you. Yep, I got you on that. Disgusting. I hope it goes away. That's what we're praying for. That we got to expose them, and they when we cower and we hide, that's what gives them their power. Yes.
When they try to attack us and we stand up strong, they get exposed and they have to back down. And so we're here as long as we are able to, and we've got to not back down. We can't allow them to be able to have that power over us.
Well, God bless you for that. And I'm glad that you and your family were able to get through all that. And hopefully it stops. Hopefully the shenanigans stop for you. Well,
you know, you're telling the truth when you're catching flack. So hopefully we're going to always continue to tell the truth.
Yeah. Music lovers, shame on them for traumatizing the children like that. So it's all, you know what? So ritualistic what is it called? Yeah, the ritual abuse, it happens over and over. Satanic, you know, and they love doing these things because they know what it does to a person on a psychological level. You know, that ritual abuse, it's never ending, and the media is part of it. You know, our politicians know that. Yeah, so it's like they're on the same team.
Shows that exclusively. I mean, extensively, where the media, the police, elected officials, businessmen, political leaders were all colluding together to cover up for the crimes, to produce a mass media campaign to say it was all made up and just make it all go away, when you had people that were completely unconnected to each other telling the same exact stories over and over again. It was obviously a massive cover-up of evil.
It was. And, I don't know how many people remember that. When the story was breaking and happening back then, all I remember hearing was Franklin scandal, Franklin cover-up. I don't remember much of it until I got older. Then I started researching it myself, and I was like, wow, that is deep, it's dark. And now you've seen that show. What's it called? There was 3 seasons of it, and it was Matthew McConaughey and White Men Can't Jump. Woody Harrelson. When there was what was that called, you guys? I'm sure somebody in the chat will help me out with that. But season 1 was just about that stuff. About finding the kids. They were in these tunnels and the caves, and they were out in the woods, and they found all this satanic ritual stuff out in the woods, and then it was connected to political people. It was crazy.
I never saw that.
Yeah, there's 3 seasons of it. Season 2 and 3 they're dumb and woke, but the first season was really, really good. I'm trying to remember what that was, you guys. Come on, somebody out there in the chat, you got to remember. True Detective, yes, thank you. It was season 1, season 1 of True Detective. That's Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. Go watch that. Yeah, go watch that, and it reminded me of that Franklin cover-up, which was disgusting and sick.
Most horrific. I can't imagine anything more horrific.
Wow. Well, more trauma. They feed off trauma. Lover of Truth says they feed off that trauma. That's for sure. All right. So where do we go from here?
We can go into so in my book's Invasion, I kind of start off with the foundation of these tentacles of the conspiracy that a lot of people know about: Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, Council on Foreign Relations. And then I go into kind of more of a deep dive on a different angle than I've seen anywhere else. One of the organizations, the typical conspiracy go-to guys have never even talked about, which is the Alfalfa Club, which I'll get into after Skull and Bones, which I think is important to get into.
Yeah.
Skull and Bones, the longest time that there's. Do I have the book right here?
Well, while you're looking for that book, you sent me. Go ahead and get your book. I'll cue this up here. But you had sent me in the email these PDFs out of your book, Invasion.
Yeah, Invasion Volume 2. So
let's go over here to this, and we'll take a look. Here it is, right here. This is Chapter 4, talking about Skull and Bones. Can you see that? Yeah. Should I bring it up? Can anybody see that? Is it? I'll bring it up a little.
Yeah, I can see it. So it's out, right. But you got Outcast Bubble on there.
Oh, I think we'll be fine on that side.
Okay, good.
It probably won't cover it up. But yeah, this is talking about the next tentacle of the Hydra-like beast that needs to be discussed is the Order of the Skull and Bones. So I'll let you go into what that is and some of the names, because I know some of the names. I'm sure a lot of our audience probably knows some of the names, but some people will be, the numerology too. I mean, it's all here, you guys. This is the stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
So for the longest time, that's the book I was grabbing, was America's Secret Establishment by Anthony Sutton. That was the go-to book for anybody that wanted the in-depth coverage of what's Skull and Bones all about, what's its history, its foundations, what were they all about, and they talk about Yale. And when you go towards the back of the book, he says that, and Yale is the only chapter. And so I was like, wow. And so when I discovered that there was actually a second chapter, I didn't want to say, oh, there's only 2 and fall for that same mistake. I don't think Anthony was maliciously only saying it was only one place. I just think it's hard to find a lot of these documents. And so, so the second chapter that we've been able to discover so far is at the University of Utah. And it was, so we go to the 1830s when the Skull and Bones was formed at Yale after one of its founders went to and joined one of its more parent secret societies in Europe, came to America and formed a chapter of Skull and Bones at Yale. And then in the early 1900s, 1906, an alumni from Yale who became a Anglican preacher, bishop, I think it was, comes to Utah, and he is given orders to form another chapter of Skull and Bones in Utah.
Okay.
So what we've been able to find is just like the Yale organization, the Utah organization, they have a lot of records that you can go through. You can look through school yearbooks and newspapers and whatnot up until about the late 60s, early 70s. And then basically at both those organizations, the paper trail stops. And so it's very difficult to find more modern evidence and things about Skull and Bones at either Yale or the University of Utah. There are a few things that I've been able to dig up here and there, but it's definitely just dramatically cuts off in the early 70s trying to find that paper trail. But with the paper trail that we do have, we know that the initiation at both organizations, because some people want to, because their favorite personality they found out was a member of it, and so they want to make an excuse of, well, they must be different. It's different here than it is over there. But what we can find out that it's not like a different organization with the same name. It's the same organization with different chapters. So their rules are the same for both organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And so we look at the initiation at the University of Utah. There's not a lot of details of what it is, but one of the examples that we have is that it drove one of the initiates insane. And he was, because of the insanity that was triggered in his brain, he was causing damage. In the town about 45 miles south of So University of Utah's in Salt Lake. He goes down to Provo and is causing all kinds of damage. And the president of the University of Utah calls up the police department down in Provo and says, leave the guy alone. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of all the damages. We'll cover any costs. Just let him go. And so a senior member of Skull and Bones goes down and picks up the initiate, and the whole thing just goes away. Nobody's held accountable. In one of the University of Utah yearbooks, it says, Skull and Bones makes us believe in infanticide. They're just saying that right there in the book, that they, infanticide, the murder, it's as horrific as abortion is, infanticide is the next level where the baby's born and then they murder it. And they're saying that Skull and Bones makes us believe in that. And so there is no distinction, there's no difference, I should say, between the Yale and University of Utah chapters. It is just a chapter of the same organization, and their goals are the same: global government, population control, the New World Order, essentially.
Yeah.
And what we find is that, again, just through, I think, divine providence, and there's a scan near the end of that document that you're showing there, the initiates, when they go into, when they're invited to apply to be a member of Skull and Bones, they receive this black envelope with a wax seal on the back of it.
Am I getting close to it? Am I scrolling?
Yep. Just keep on going.
What page is that on?
I think it's the last page. So that's the infanticide page that I scanned from their yearbook. But just scroll to the last page of this document.
Oh, page 20. I got you. Okay.
Right there. Go back up. Scroll back up. Sorry, one right there. So
okay,
that is a picture that I took of the envelope. An individual that was invited to become a member, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got this thing from when I was going to the university, and I kept it, so
what?
Go and so 322. Again, this is the University of Utah, which is the same new numbers that they use at Yale. It's the same club, same organization. And so they have this branch where they're trying to recruit people into their society, where they can have people of influence in religion, business, government, education, to be able to make sure that their agenda is implemented uniformly throughout all the institutions of society. Yeah. And so just showing those documents so that you can see it for yourself it is the same organization.
So what this picture is for you audio listeners is, when back in the day when they would write a letter and they close the envelope and then they would pour the wax on it and stamp it with that metal, what's it called? The stamp, I get the brand or whatever. Well, that's what this person saved. The seal, the wax seal. So that's what this person saved. They cut it off of the envelope and saved it. And of course, there it is, the 322, the skull and bones. Wasn't George Bush part of this? And I mean, there's a lot of presidents
George Bush Senior, George Bush Jr. You have John Kerry.
Yep.
You have several presidents, individuals, and I put there in that chapter as well some of the other names of individuals that were involved on the national level, and how like John Kerry and George Bush were interviewed on Meet the Press, and they both said, "Oh, we can't talk about it; it's so secret."
I remember that,
and
I have that clip somewhere too in this computer.
Yeah,
oh, it's sickening, man. Oh,
and
let's
so
talk about, okay. Well, I was going to ask you, but go ahead. I want to ask you a few things that I'm noticing here.
You got U.S. senators like Frank Moss. You have a federal judge, Bruce Jenkins, and so I want people to know that I'm naming names and showing what their positions were. And I'm working on a follow-up volume where it'll be about 200 pages where I go in and show you more in detail of the organization, as well as the real in-depth is giving you the list of hundreds and hundreds of names and then where they ended up as an adult afterwards, and showing that this is where they plant people into these positions of power.
Yeah, and that's so important to make that connection, from both sides there. The owl. I mean, there's so much symbolism in this stuff, Ben. The symbolism is out of this world in this stuff, and we see it all over the place. We're going to see it here for people who like to watch the Super Bowl, that halftime show, in award shows, coming out of Hollywood. There's so many symbols. I'm looking at this thing right here talking about the initiates referred as goats. That greatest of all time. Tell us about the goat and what the meaning of that, the significance, and
it's really important for us to understand what that really means, because it's again getting into their depravity. And you talk about symbolism and how when they get the next organization they go up to from Skull and Bones is called Owl and Key. Where else? What other secret society do we see an owl in? And so it's very much as a part of it. So the goats, they're called like Baphomet, right?
Yeah.
Smearing ungodly costumes and requirements on. So this is from their from one of the newspapers that was reporting on one of their events. The sober members of the Royal Order of Owl and Key, the men who last year had undergone the humiliations at Skull and Bones, smearing ungodly costumes and requirements on the year's goats. And then and so referring to initiates as goats is revealing, because it talks about, today we think of it as greatest of all time, but really you get into the original meaning of these words, because this was written, this article wasn't written in modern times. This is about 70 years old was when this article was written. And you looked at the dictionary, and it was a term that meant excessive or offensive sexual desire is what a goat was when this was written. And then so you have the Skull and Bones under the name of, they were references to goat and goathood. And so those are differences, because goathood and then goat master, right? A goat is a lecher, licentious person, someone who is showing excessive or offensive sexual desire. Goathood is to be unaccountable, and the person who initiates the goats is called a goat master. Goat master is a term for someone who fornicates with a goat. And so this is what they're saying about themselves, just like we see with Carol Quigley and Tragedy and Hope, where their admissions about themselves is much more powerful than anything I could say about them. They're admitting this about themselves.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me like they're gloating about it, not just admitting it, but they're gloating, and look, their God is not my God. That's all I'm saying.
That's for sure.
Golly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then in the letter that they get, it says that, quote, your candidacy is to be kept a total secret, and that you're to come alone and to beware of your actions because you are being watched, and the letter is signed 322. So I mean, these guys are clear. This isn't, some people like to write off Skull and Bones. Oh, that's just a college fraternity. It's all goofy.
Mhm.
No, this is satanic. This is evil. And what they go on to do as adults is continuing on implementing the satanic agenda on the population at large.
Yeah, and they call themselves the Bonesmen. Ben, I remember going back to the this is what whoops sorry to the Yale initiatives, the way they got initiated over in what was it? It was they had to do something with the coffin and
they had to lie naked in a coffin and confess all of their sexual sins.
Okay, so they're lying naked there in a coffin while these other hooded figures were standing around the coffin.
Well, and there was previous members had to lie naked. Well, another initiate had to lay in the coffin naked with them while they're confessing these things.
Yes, that's right. You guys, these are the people that we elect. You understand what's going on here? We elect these people. These people are famous on our news shows. These people are famous and well loved because of media. But they won't ever talk about these kind of things. They won't even get these kind of questions out there. You got to ask yourself why.
The author of the famous book about John Adams, the McCullough, the famous author, he's Skull and Bones. The actor that played John Adams in the HBO series, member of Skull and Bones. So it's not just politics; it's every aspect of society.
Yeah. And okay, so obvious question, and I'm sure you got the obvious answer. Why? Why are they doing this? What's making them want to do these things? What does it benefit them?
Well, I mean, power and money is definitely a benefit to them, but the why, and so also getting into how a lot of more information doesn't come out. Mm-hmm. And it's because first of all, before you're even able to become a member, they do an in-depth investigation into you and your family and those connections to see what kind of power you can bring the organization as well as the movement. And then as a part of the initiation, you are initiated. It's not like a traditional fraternity initiation. These are, you're swearing to secrecy. It's not just secrecy, but you are doing basically what is a blood oath where you will be killed if you violate the secrecy. Mm-hmm. And so they are being initiated into a satanic society where they serve Satan. Mm-hmm. And so just like a Christian they are willing to give their lives for Christ. These individuals, after they go through the initiation, are willing to give their lives for Satan and his agenda. And so you have that religious devotion, which is the motivation. And then an additional motivation is they are given the power and money, and they are, if any of them ever get down on their luck, they are given large amounts of money to make sure that they don't feel tempted to go and sell their secrets. And so they're able to protect and insulate themselves against exposure from people wanting to come out, like your Carol Quigley's. He liked what they were doing, but just give me an example of somebody that came out and exposed what some insiders were doing. But they protect themselves in that way. And then as a part of that, they, in the organization, they swear an oath of protection. And so if another brother is going to be in trouble, to make sure that they don't feel like they have to rat them out to get themselves a plea deal, they protect each other in their crimes. So they can murder, they can steal, they can plunder, and they are protected from prosecution, as we mentioned earlier, with things like the satanic ritual abuse, where all of a sudden every aspect of society is saying, "Oh, this is satanic panic; it's all made up." They back each other up in that same way. There's a 70s made-for-TV movie called Brotherhood of the Bell with, I think it was Glenn Ford or Henry Ford. Not Henry Ford, that's the car guy. Glenn Ford, I think it was. And it's on YouTube. Encourage anybody to watch it. It's called Brotherhood of the Bell, which is basically just saying Skull and Bones without saying Skull and Bones. And it shows very well how they make sure and protect each other in their crimes.
These people, they're led by Satan. They don't care.
Absolutely.
The only reason they care about us is because they don't want our salvation to Jesus and God. They want to control everything that we see, hear, and do and have access to. My thoughts here on this, I just lost it because I looked at the chat room. Anyway,
they want to destroy. They want souls to be destroyed, but they also want the plebs basically to worship them and to treat them as legitimate and to give them power. And we give them power by assenting to their authority, and so giving in to their so-called demands with these. Can you imagine if you knew that your local official was a Satanist involved in these things? Are you going to listen to them? Of course not. And so they gain their power and authority by you treating them as legitimate rulers over you.
Yeah. And see, that makes so much sense to what drives them now, because they want our souls. They want to crush our souls. The depopulation, the control, the poisoning of our food, air, the skies, our soil. They want us dependent on for everything that we do. They want us dependent on them. That's why they don't like us out here raising our own chickens and hunting and having these wells in our wood stoves, right? And being, held accountable to each other. They want us to be all on their grids and zero self-sufficiency whatsoever on our own. And they drive that, or they're driven by that from the dark one, Satanic. It is wild. Here's a question coming off from the chat, and I'll put it up on the screen right here. I guess I don't quite know where to start looking into things like these. Okay, now here's another one. People are wondering if if Trump or any of his family have any links to Skull and Bones, etc., stuff like that. That's a question coming off from the Twitch chat.
Specifically, not that I've found so far, to Skull and Bones. We'll be coming out with a report in just a couple of weeks on other internationalist organizations' ties that some his cabinet and family has. So with Skull and Bones, though, again, I recommend the book Secret Establishment. I recommend Invasion Volume 2, the book that I wrote that goes into these details. Also, if you go to treeoflibertysociety.com and you just type in the search bar Skull and Bones, I do an introduction video with, again, going the source. Where's the source where you can learn this information? And then I go into more detail, naming names. I do another video where I compare Skull and Bones at Yale versus University of Utah. And so those are some good starting points to get yourself going, to know, okay, what are some things I need to be digging into? How do I do this research? And then as a member of Tree and Liberty Society, we have in our member portal, we have the scans of all of the documents that we've been able to get from this, so that folks can just start to do their own research, put all the pieces together, find more names, all that kind of stuff. So just a nice little thank you gift for those that support our efforts over there.
Awesome. You guys go check that out. I'll put it back on the screen right here. I changed it. It's treeoflibertysociety.com. Go over there and check that out. So, there's some, it's on your screen right there, you guys. So, the Skull and Bones, it's big.
It's huge.
Yeah. She says Ben's got 4 pages of results for Skull and Bones. Amazing. So she must have done a search for you on there. So that's awesome. This is a big thing. And this Skull and Bones is not the only one. There are several, coming out of these, out of the, I want to say Ivy Leagues, I guess, so
Owl and Key, Scroll and Key, Wolf Head, there's lots. Correct.
Right. Well, which one should we go into next? Where do you want to go? Do you want to get to,
maybe we could do Alfalfa Club, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, go ahead and start introducing the Alfalfa Club, and I will get us switched over there.
I bet you most people, even those of you that have been following, the conspiracy for a while, probably aren't really aware of the Alfalfa Club. And it's very difficult. When I first heard about it, I was like, so just give you an example of what made me raise my eyebrow about this Alfalfa Club. And so our former, in where I'm right now, the state of Utah's former senator, Mitt Romney,
Mm-hmm.
Mittens, some people like to call him as a way to make fun of him, but it was in a local newspaper or local news website, said Mitt Romney heads up Washington D.C. secret society. And I was like, secret society, what is it? And so Alfalfa Club. So I do a Google search for Alfalfa Club, and I want to find out what are they saying about themselves. And it's very much just like almost like a nothing burger, where they claim that they're just there to celebrate Robert E. Lee's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an organization that is of the elites in politics, government, media, and academia and business. Okay, 200, limited to 200 members, invite only. They only have a new member when an old member dies. I'm like, why that kind of secrecy? Why that kind of eliteness if it's simply to celebrate the birthday of a Confederate general? And if all of these elites are like, you have, again, your John Kerry's, Mitt Romney's, you name it, if they're a part of this, why isn't the corporate media calling them a bunch of racists for supporting a Confederate general or celebrating a Confederate birthday's general? And so it just didn't make sense. And so I just kept digging and digging and digging. And finally, I came across, again in a university archive, a book published in 1918. Because everything online was just, we're just celebrating a birthday party for a Confederate general. Why is Obama here celebrating a Confederate general's birthday if that's what it's all about? Baloney. And so I was able to read their autobiography, what they say about themselves, why they were created. And they call themselves the oldest secret society in existence, which is probably why most of us have never heard of it until right now. And because, the more you hear, the less you've heard about something, probably the more powerful it is. And because they like to keep themselves kind of in the background. And in this book, they mention how they were the, the Edward Mandell House throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is written in 1918. Now, if you don't know who who Colonel House is, he wrote a book called, oh my goodness, I'm having a blank on the name of the book. But anyways, he was the co-founder of the Council on Foreign Relations. He was the brain trust behind the Federal Reserve Act. And he's referred to as President Woodrow Wilson's brain. He's kind of the power behind the throne.
Yeah, he was.
And so this is in 1918.
Go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt. Yeah, I was just going to say he was like his right hand man during all that stuff. That's when we got the Federal Reserve Act and all that with the with the 1913, all that secrecy and all that stuff. That was Woodrow Wilson and him doing this stuff. So keep going.
Being kind of the guy behind the scenes directing him.
Yeah.
And so this book comes out just 5 years after the Federal Reserve Act is pushed. And just about maybe 25, 30 years before the formation of the Council on Foreign Relations that he helps form as a way to be able to move the United States towards accepting global government. And so this book, written in 1918, says that it basically, because it's speaking amongst themselves, where the average person in the population, if that's who they were talking to, they would never have said, he's the Mandel House, we're the Mandel House of history. Because nobody knew who Mandel House was unless you were an insider knowing who he was at this point in history. Even today, most people don't know who he was. And so they're saying themselves, they're admitting about themselves that they were the power behind the throne, going all the way back to ancient Egypt. And that their goal, again, is just like with Skull and Bones, just like with the CFR, just like with the Bohemian Grove, just like with the Bilderbergers, is to build the new world order. So it's another tentacle. Because of its secrecy, it's most likely a much more rooted, higher up tentacle than your typical one that your average person would know about, but it is the same goals, and it has a lot of the overlap of individuals that are involved in it, as we see in these other organizations pushing the same exact agenda. And so in that chapter in Invasion Volume 2, I go through and I investigate and I show as many of the individuals that been able to find are involved with this as I could, and it's pages and pages of individuals, which is interesting. So one of the things that it says, I'm just going to read from my book, which is quoting the biography of the Alfalfa Club. Says it's the oldest club in existence. When the first known king of the human race united the two kingdoms of Egypt under one crown, which epoch is placed by the various historians from 2700 BC to 5800 BC. He found it necessary to gather about him a number of real good friends who would not mix up with the barbarians to his detriment. To this association was entrusted the great royal secrets. It was called by the king himself the Alfalfa Club, which name has remained to the present day. So in public today, if you read the typical Google result, it will say, oh, it's named Alfalfa Club because we just like to get drunk. Just like they try to, poo-poo and try to make Skull and Bones just a fraternity for drunk 20-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, oh, this is just a group for drunk adults.
Right.
When we know it's much more nefarious and dastardly than that. Because why would you name it again? Why would you be using it to celebrate a Confederate general's birthday? And so we see people from just many, many different areas of society, the heads of, UN ambassadors, NATO vice presidents. You have the Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. You have U.S. ambassadors, the CEO of Comcast, senators from different states. You have Reagan's chief of staff was a part of this. James Baker, U.S. Secretary of State during the Bush senior administrations, just goes on and on. You have astronauts. Was it Buzz Aldrin? I think if I remember correctly, is on there. The list is all in the book Invasion Volume 2, and so it's just another one of these examples of a super secret organization. They when they had their meeting, they just had their annual meeting just a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C., and they swear themselves to secrecy. They are no media out there is allowed to cover it and to talk about what was mentioned there, and so that's again a secrecy, the elites, and it's a cover. It's a fraud. They are not celebrating Robert E. Lee's birthday. It is about global government. In fact, in this 1918 biography, they claim that World War I was all about the Kaiser from Germany going to war to gain the secrets of the Alfalfa Club. And so those are real things that are going on behind the scenes, why these things are happening, as opposed to what is it that we're being told and being fed through the corporate media.
Yeah. Thanks for all that stuff. Outcast is here. He's joining us here. Hey. Was the book called The Real Colonel House?
Oh no, it was a fiction. The one that I was talking about, the one that he wrote. Yeah. It was a fiction book that he wrote where he said it was about basically how they wanted to build worldwide socialism. And can't believe I'm having a blank on it. Oh, Philip Drew Administrator is the name of the book. Okay, cool. It's crazy. I want to read a few of these names too to add to the list. Now, you guys, this is the Alfalfa Club he's talking about. This is right from your book. I believe page 2. It says, to name a few. Listen to these names: Warren Buffett, Michael Bloomberg, Bill Marriott, Steve Case, Chief Justice John Roberts, the conservative, right? White House Senior Advisor Valerie Jarrett, George H.W. Bush, George Bush, Dick Cheney, Sandra Day O'Connor, Colin Powell, Madeleine Albright, who said it's okay that they killed 500,000 children over there in Iraq, and Vernon Jordan, and there's so many more. And membership is it's by invitation only. Yep. So it's crazy. I mean, I'm going to switch us over here to introduce you to my partner, Outcast in Crime. What's going on, Outcast? I know you've been sitting there for a few minutes.
We're talking about the Alfalfa Club with Ben McClintock.
I was really curious to hear about this, so I think I came on at an interesting time. Although I do feel a little awkward popping in and not hearing the beginning. But
Yeah. Well,
Ben, it sounds like you are highly researched, and it's an honor to have you on the show. Sorry, I'm popping in
Thank
like
you.
this. I just had a rough 24 hours.
Happy birthday, and I'm sorry to hear about your cat.
Thank you. I just not too long ago I just got done putting him in the ground, and just I don't know. It's one of those days.
We love Bruce the Majestic. So, Ben, if you want to hold your book up again, Invasion, this is what we're talking about. He's got plenty of these books outcast. This one here is Invasion. And what is it? Tentacles. If you want to read that one more time just to get him.
So volume 1 is how the conspiracy has infiltrated your community. And then volume 2 is how we end it. And it gets into more detail. So like this one is how the international conspiracy invaded like a red state like Utah back in the 1800s, and how it goes to today. And then the second volume goes into these secret societies that we all know about, except for Alfalfa Club, which is hardly known about at all, and showing their connection again into our local communities, so that we can start to see how this isn't something that's far away in DC or at the UN headquarters in New York. These Satanists are right in our community, and we need to start to recognize them, so that we really see that they're not implementing Agenda 2030 ignorantly. They're doing it on purpose, and we have to stop them.
Yeah, and they're doing it in deception. Outcast, we talked about deception a little bit ago, and all these people, their God is different than our God, and deception is their key, their tool, and they're implementing all these things. Ben's been laying it out just so easy. So in layman's terms, he's been laying it out so fresh, so clean. Do you have any questions off the top of your mind, Outcast, for him?
Well, like I said, I feel a little awkward popping in like this, but Ben, just curious. I have this very distinct feeling that Michigan, probably because of the fresh water, is some type of a focal point or a battleground for them to infiltrate and take over. Do you have any information on that?
Oh, I don't. Michigan is not something I've been able to get my tentacles into, so to say.
Gut feeling though.
It makes sense because of course water is essential, but really they, as we can really identify our local communities, they go after those power structures, right? So in a so-called red state, they infiltrate major religious institutions and the Republican Party, and in the blue states, they'll really go after the Democrats and some other big institution, whether it's like Massachusetts, where it'd be maybe Catholics. That kind of stuff is really those institutions they go after to try and get the people to grab on, just like the CFR's goal was to sell the American people on global governance. That's what they're trying to do on the local community. So I need to look more into. I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that. I just wondered if there was anything off the top of your head. Because I apologize.
I get the sense for years they've been saying Michigan is a purple state, which means it can flip flop either way. But I just see a very concise power grab where the one side is trying to grab a hold of it, and like our governor was on the payroll with George Soros at one point. So, she seems like a bad egg to me because she's trying to sell the state out, and you know how they work. They love to sell scarcity. So if there's plenty of water in Michigan, they need to get a handle on that, because how are they going to sell water scarcity when you got the Great Lakes?
Exactly. Yep. Well, the same thing in my state of Utah. In the 80s, we had flooding. And so what they did was, and this is something everybody forgets about, New York Times actually reported it, where they were draining the Great Salt Lake to prevent flooding of the city. And then now fast forward to, 30, 40 years later, the Great Salt Lake is drying up. Well, you guys are draining it. And so they want to create scarcity or sell scarcity to be able to get the people to give government more power.
And you can see that directly right there with the with what they're doing in California with holding the water back, and then they make up these terms or make up these protected fish, smelt, which we dip for smelt like crazy up here. There's no protection on those. I mean, give me a break. They'll pick a little animal or a little tree or something like that and use that as, hey, here's our cover, the Hegelian dialectic, right? So you guys can't go in here anymore. We're going to
Bundy.
Yeah, exactly. The bunnies. Oh man, that drove me nuts when I was watching the whole bunny ranch and all that stuff with the, what's his name? Lavoy Finicum, right? all that stuff. I was so fired up back then, and I don't know. That's a whole nother story. But okay, let's get back to this Alfalfa Club. Ben. So,
go ahead. Sorry.
Should we go back to, because I want to ask you a question. Regarding the Alfalfa Club, the whole powers that be behind the scenes like this, the secret societies, and the push for technocracy. Okay, so they that's what we're seeing that now, right? You see what Elon Musk is bringing to the table. You're seeing what this AI stuff. Back in the 30s with Technocracy Inc., they had the plans, the ideas, but they did not have the technology that they were waiting for. It's here now. Their goals are to dictate scientifically and through technology and scientific dictatorship. That's how they want to control us. They don't want to use politicians anymore. They want to replace politicians with AI systems, and that way it's so much easier. They have 1 point control over us then. It's almost like the consolidation of all the local mom and pop hardware stores into the Home Depot. Now you have 1 point control over all building supplies. Okay. It's the same thing with what they're doing. So if you can, I don't know if that's too much of a stretch to relate technocracy into exactly what you're talking about with these secret societies.
That's a part of the overall agenda of these organizations. I mean, these tentacles that I've been talking about. And that's why you see in rural areas where they're getting federal funding to get, these people that are, 25 miles away from their nearest neighbor to get them high-speed internet.
Yeah, because they need it, right? Yeah.
They need it. The technical infrastructure is something that that the conspiracy needs to be in place. And so there are some people out there selling fear that in one aspect of there's going to be a crash and you're not going to have electricity, and they're the ones that are going to be doing it. And whether that happens or whether there is a technology crash or not, that's a different story. But they're not the ones that are going to be doing it. They've spent the last 50 years implementing and building their technological infrastructure. They need it. They do not want to set off a collapse of their infrastructure that they need for total control. And so we need to understand that aspect of it. They want the satellite internet going into every community. They want to be able to. We have all those STEM programs they're talking about in the schools, trying to get everybody to government funding of people becoming programmers. All of these different things are needed to integrate their technocracy to be able to have total and absolute control. Just like after after 9/11, we had the Patriot Act, and then there was the short-lived Total Information Awareness Program. I know it wasn't short-lived. They implemented it through other programs, but under that name, where they had the all-seeing eye and the pyramid, and they called it the Total Information Awareness Program. They need this infrastructure to have their total information awareness. The 15-minute cities, pushing us into those areas where they can have total control over us, where we depend on the government with our high-density housings. We can't grow our own food. We have to have city water. We are not independent in any way. They want us dependent. They call it interdependence. They want us dependent wholly for our sustenance and our livelihood on them and their ability to get us food, water, and shelter.
There it is, the SMART system, self-monitoring, analysis, reporting technology. And, everything that you just laid out there, Ben, that's part of the whole Internet of Things that Hillary Clinton was talking about in the 90s. Remember, she was flapping her jaws about that stuff. Well, people didn't know what it was. The first sign of it that I saw was the smart meter that was on my house suddenly, unexpectedly, when I came home from work one day. Then I started seeing the implementation of these smart meters on everybody's homes that we were servicing and going to. And now the LEDs, all the smart appliances, the smart cards, the smart watch, the stuff that you put on your arms, the wearables, all the smart stuff.
Alexa,
all these things. I mean, I've been going on and on and on about this. Outcast, we've been doing this since day one, right? On this podcast for 4 years now. And look how close we're getting. The Overton window keeps getting closer and closer to this technology taking over and people not seeing that these LED lights are not good for us. And they're not seeing that TV that you're so happy about is watching you and listening to you. And why do you need a camera in your TV, in your refrigerator? Anybody? Why do you need a camera in there? So you can go to the grocery store and say, oh, I don't know what's in my fridge. I better look. Guess who else is looking in your fridge to see what you're eating, to see what you're storing? Come on, people. I'm ranting and raving here, but our audience knows this stuff, Ben. I'm hoping that this reaches people who are new to this and will start going down their own red pill journey to figure out and understand that, hey, all this stuff, these LEDs, all this stuff is not good for us. It's spying on us. It's listening to us. And eventually it's going to control us. Once they get the final pieces in place, well, the biggest piece is that smart meter on the side of your house and this technology that's flying around. So I'm sorry to hijack this, but Outcast, Ben, I mean, jump on whatever I said there. Not all at once.
It's important for us to understand that, again, going back to, it's not just about ranting and raving. It's not just about complaining about, the Simpsons meme of the old man yelling at cloud.
Yeah.
It's we have to understand it so that we know how to make sure that we are molding our lives in a way that will help us to not be swallowed up by this technocracy, that we are not moving to convenient 15-minute cities, that we are not going to a car that can be shut off, and that we are not, going to public transportation so that, and then that we're not that we go back to land ownership, that we have the well, that we have the ability to grow food, and that we are in a community of people, that we're building understanding amongst our neighbors. So that way, just like with, the no-knock raid that happened to me, if my neighbors, if I lived in an area where they understood the principles of liberty and they understood what the threats of the police state were, we could come to each other's defense. And so if we're not dependent upon them for our food, water, and shelter, and that we can stand together to defend ourselves against their oppression, they have no power over us. And so if we understand their goals and their agenda, we can make sure that we are forming our lives in a way that we are dependent and free of them.
Right. Outcast, what does this remind you of? Everything he's talking about. We're inching closer towards it.
Well, the beast system, the one world government, yeah, it's something that's on our radar constantly, and everything we look at is from that biblical filter. I mean, these plane crashes, like Jesse, you said it eloquently. Everything you said earlier, you weren't ranting and raving, Jesse. Everything you're saying was awesome. You really, as long as I've known you, you still managed to really get my mental going, and I love that about you. But I'm going to say that I see that these plane crashes, for example, you pointed out, connected the dots. A couple of years ago, it was train crashes, and then we had food distribution centers burning, and then we had egg factories burning, and they're always onto something, and it's like a squeeze. I can't help but think of Klaus Schwab. Just a week or so ago, we talked about it. He was at the World Economic Forum, and he's saying, in our opinion, Trump is illegitimate. Now, I'm not saying Trump's my savior, because I've got some doubts about some of the things he's doing too, but they're like, Trump is illegitimate in our eyes, and we actually control the United States. And it's as simple as that. And then I see right after that, plane crashes, one after another. And I'm like, they are trying to terrorize us or shut down our infrastructure, make people cautious about traveling. I mean, everything is all interconnected, and it always comes back to Revelations. And also, I'll take it even further back into biblical history when we talk about Nimrod and the Babylonians. He wanted a one world government, one world currency, one world leader. I mean, it's always the same agenda on repeat. And that's the funny thing is that we got to get our brothers and sisters in the world who are asleep right now to understand, because they walk into every single trap gleefully. They just don't want to even think about that. This isn't what the narrative says it is. And I'm just thinking out loud here. And Ben, like I said, I apologize for jumping in late. I'm probably hijacking some things here that you maybe touched on earlier. But man, I just connect the dots. It's out there. It's all one story. They're not separate conspiracies. They're all interconnected. And it's now, Ben, you were talking about you have your book talks about a plan to stop them. Ben, do you think that do we have a chance here? Does humanity have a chance? I mean, where are we at in this process? Because to me, it looks pretty insidious, but at the same time, I do see people waking up. What's your overall take on where we're at?
So there was this book written, I think it was the 60s or 70s, called The Rapture Cult. And it gave the history of how the conspiracy infiltrated the churches to get them to give up because there was nothing that they could do about it. And there's a pastor out of Montana, Missoula, Montana, ran for president, Chuck Baldwin. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his talks. He's really a liberty guy. And he talks about the importance for Christians to occupy until he comes, going from, I think, the book of Luke and the vineyard, and the Lord of the vineyard telling his servants he's leaving and he's gonna return. And so to occupy until I come. And so the idea is that we are supposed to make the world better. Is the world better because I'm here? Am I bringing more people to Christ? Am I opposing? Am I standing against these hidden things of darkness and this satanic agenda? Am I going to be able to go before my Savior and say, you know what, I didn't just hide in my cave waiting for you to return, but I was actively engaged in a good cause to defeat Satan and to build up your kingdom, God. And so the book written back in I think it was the 70s, called The Rapture Cult, goes through and shows how in the late 1820s, early 1830s, a man by the name of John Darby, and a woman, MacDonald was her last name, and how she got these satanic revelations of how fighting for liberty was evil, and introducing this concept into Christian churches, that doing anything to oppose evil was actually fighting against the return of the Savior. And so turning that into a movement where we see in the 1920s, Moody Monthly, a Christian magazine, put out an article saying, a lot of people are asking us about the rise of communism. We don't need to worry about communism because the Lord is going to come before communism causes a problem in the world. And so it's all about this agenda to get Satan's biggest threat out of the battle. And so it's essential that we recognize that our job is to always occupy until he comes, to make things better, and to do everything we can to be a good servant by doing what we can to defeat Satan and defeat his minions here on the earth, to make sure that garden is beautiful when he returns.
Wow, I love that perspective. That's great. Thank you for answering that question so perfectly. It's like, on one hand, you hear Christians talking about Jesus being this like ultimate pacifist or something, but then on the other hand, we read of him going to the temple and turning over the tables. So
exactly,
which is it? And as Christians, are we supposed to be completely passive and just roll over, or are we supposed to stand opposed? It's a great thing that you bring up there, because I think I struggle with that sometimes. I'm like, well, am I supposed to just go along for the ride because we're one step closer to his return and not do anything? But at the same time, sorry, I'm just going to pontificate for a second here. I am constantly reminded that we are spiritual beings in a temporary human suit, here for a purpose, to do battle against evil. And the evil's main objective is to get us to either stand down or be destroyed. I should say more so to be destroyed with him. The devil cannot be redeemed. We can. He hates that about us, so he's going to drag as many people to hell with him as possible. And I don't say that lightly. That's the battle we're in. And to be passive and just roll over, it makes me crazy, because it's in Hosea. I don't remember the exact scripture, but my children perish for lack of knowledge. Okay, well, I don't mean just physically, but spiritually. Right? If you just stick your head in the sand and say, oh, give Caesar his due, and all the typical Christian things that we do, it's a recipe for disaster. Yeah. And what if you think about it, in the Lord's Prayer, what we're praying for is one of the things, is the most poignant things that sticks out in my head more and more every day. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So does that sound like we're just going to roll over and let the Satan have his way with us? No, sounds like we're going to transform earth into paradise. Right. Mm-hmm. Just thinking out loud. Anything stick with you guys there?
And we don't know. And so, can you imagine the founding fathers saying, look how evil King George is getting? Isn't that great? That means Jesus is coming any minute now. Let's just sit back and let him be as horrible as possible, so that way the Savior is going to return faster. Where would we be right now if that was the attitude of the founding fathers? I think that's anti-Christian.
Mm-hmm. I like that too. My thought on it is, he said stand and occupy, not just stand there and don't do anything, but carry on with what he was doing at the time. So let's not just stand here and get pushed all around. No, stand here in the exact form and exactly the way he was here. Obviously, we can't do the things that he did. We can only aspire to do these things, but we have to get as close as we can and push back on all this evil nonsense that's going on. It's all deception, Ben.
Absolutely.
There's deception all around us, and he is a liar. Oh man. So, okay. Where do we go from there? Let's get back on track with, let's see here. We were on the topic of technocracy. We were with the Alfalfa Club. Is there any question, outcast from you to Ben about this Alfalfa Club anymore? I mean, should we go deeper into Alfalfa Club, or did you pretty much hit all that, Ben?
I mean, there's always more to get into. I just didn't know your time, and I like to kind of make sure that we're keeping people their attention span. So,
yep.
Just if you have a question specific, or anybody listening has a specific question,
well,
maybe I can just bring up some. Go ahead.
Yeah, where can people get your books from? I mean, is it
treeoflibertysociety.com.
Okay.
Just go to the store there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was available on Amazon.
We were on Amazon for a while, and Amazon completely not only banned Invasion Volume 1 and 2, but they banned us from ever being able to sell anything on Amazon ever again.
Okay, there you go. So, that leads me to my next question. That leads me to my next question then, because I know that that's what the enemy does. If the enemy does not like what you're talking about, he's going to get rid of it, and he uses these outlets to do that, right? So, how the heck? I've got some questions coming in over on Rumble, but I asked you about Amazon specifically because I didn't know if you were a person who was opposed to doing that. Obviously, you can sell a lot of books there, but they don't want they don't want you and what you're saying on their platform, which I think is fantastic. I want you to sell more books. But when you have these deceptive companies out there that are banning, what you're saying, obviously there's no freedom of speech, correct?
Oh yeah.
So Outcast, here we go again. Amazon's banning Ben's books. Why? Why are they doing it? What are they scared of?
What are they scared of?
I mean, it's like, you're over the target when something like that happens, right?
Yeah. I have a question here. Let me see. Let me pull this down a little bit. Vengeful. I'm fairly positive he said we should. Oh, we're talking about the stand in Occupy. Of course, Amazon did the dumb thing. Okay. There's no specific question here, but obviously Amazon will allow books, child porn type of stuff. They'll allow all these woke books out there because it toes their line, right? But it will not, truth like this, that it does exposure. No, not going to find it there on Amazon from these people. So I want you to keep the course of what you're doing. And Outcast, when you go back to watch this, listen to this later, they really, early on, Bent went through a lot of stuff in it where he lives, his house burning down, all these things. You have to go back and review that stuff, but it's crazy what they did to him. And he's still here. He's occupying. He's not letting down. I love it, Ben. So hit us with something, what's on the top of your mind today?
Well, I think just maybe a little bit more, maybe a little spark some questions on the Alfalfa Club. One of the articles that really sparked it was this headline. I said, Romney is president of a secret society in Washington. And the article said, Senator Romney has been named the president of the Alfalfa Club in Washington. He has been a member of the secret society, which includes politicians, business leaders, and billionaires since 2015. Romney takes over from another former Massachusetts politician, John Kerry, but other details about the club, including rules and possible other activities, remain private. That's what they're saying about themselves, or what the public consumption is. And so, being able to find their autobiography, which is that's not for you. That's not like on Archive, or there's so much stuff on Archive of old books. I had to go find an actual physical copy of this to be able to get this data of what their history is, what their goals are. Because they don't, of course, it's not public, it's not out there. And so it's important for us to be able to recognize how secret this is and how this secret society, just like the CFR, just like the Bohemian Club, just like the Bilderbergers, this is not Republican versus Democrat. This is how they get us to support their agenda by saying Republican good, Democrat bad, or any variation thereof. We have to understand that this is a bipartisan betrayal. They are working together, just like we read in the scriptures. You judge them by their fruits, not by their words. And so by their fruits you shall know them. And just because they're saying Constitution, just because they say liberty, just because they say Founding Father, doesn't mean that that's what they're doing. And so in the book, I expose Mike Lee, who is seen as in the mainstream as somebody that is out there fighting the good fight against those evil Democrats. But his record shows that the establishment supports him, that he is supporting the establishment's agenda. He supported, he was the water boy for Obama in expanding his power to do, what's it called? The line item vetoes he wanted to do for Obama. Obama asked him, and he was his water boy, to expand all of the Patriot Act provisions that were expiring during the Obama presidency. And then he comes in there and he says, oh, we're going to re-up all those. And it's not the Patriot Act anymore. It's now called the USA Freedom Act. How could you be against freedom?
Yeah.
And so it's important for us to recognize this. This is professional wrestling where in the ring, they pretend to hate each other and to pull each other's hair out. And then as soon as they're out of the ring, they're best buddies and they're supporting the agenda to enslave us all. And so it's important that we stop believing the character that is produced for us on the television and actually start looking into the data. And so that's what we do at the Tree of Liberty Society, is help you to find the data, to show you the data, so that then now you can see who the wolves are and who the true people are that are trying to promote liberty and tear down this conspiracy.
Wow, there is just so much on here, Ben. It's crazy. I have a Rumble rant. Thank you from Music Lover, $5. I have a few questions, or she has a few questions. What's the secret society that made your jaw hit the floor when you first heard of it?
Oh my goodness, that's a hard one. So I've been doing this for again, I really started to, I hate saying this term, but wake up, because once you think you've woken up, then it's difficult for you to wake up more.
It's another level.
So I'm waking up. I'm continuing trying to learn.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing this for a while. I think the first one, because growing up, I remember I was in the second grade and Ronald Reagan was coming to our state capitol. My dad pulled me out of school to go look at him talk. And so I had kind of nostalgia feeling for him, and you listen to his talks and about freedom and all that kind of, and getting the government out of your life. And I was like, oh, I agree with all those things. And then when I saw that he was a part of the Bohemian Grove sodomite agenda, and the stuff that he was doing to thwart the activities of the Free Chinese and to support the Chinese communists, and that he was actually putting in all the globalists into his cabinet, I think that was the one that really, because it was in the beginning. And so as you start to go on, you get more jaded and you're like, oh, look, some more evil Satanists. But in the very beginning, when I started to see what these people were really all about, and that it was really a character, just like he's an actor, it was a character he played, but the truth behind what he was doing and the people that he was involved with was much, much different.
I'm looking here on your in your book here, and I'm on page 8, and it talks about, I'll read this little paragraph here, and it says October 6th, 1994, Romney, I got to tell you this too, Ben, George Romney, which is Mitt's dad, he held office here in Michigan. He was here. I remember the name. Outcast, you remember that. And I don't remember, we were a little too young to understand what was going on at the time, but I'm interested to go back maybe and see what was going on, because Mitt Romney's not that much older than us. So,
his mom and dad were horrible.
Yeah, I remember that. That's what I do remember, but I don't remember the details. Anyway, It goes into this right here. It says, Romney wrote a letter to the largest group promoting sodomite supremacy within the Republican Party. It's back in 1994. The Log Cabin Club, telling them that they have to do what? What is this Log Cabin Club that Romney is writing about?
So again, as you just read, it's the sodomite organization within the Republican Party to normalize evil, and so Mitt Romney wrote him a letter praising them, that they played a vital role in making the Republican Party stronger in Massachusetts, and he promised this sodomite organization that he would be more in favor of their agenda than even Ted Kennedy.
Mm.
And he went on to promote, of course, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He said this is the first step into bringing you into the mainstream of society. And they knew that it couldn't be done all at once, because we were, the further you go back, the more scripture, Bible believing people Americans were, and they rejected sin, and they rejected normalizing it in society. And so they had to change the culture, and they knew that was the first step in changing the culture to being able to, what we saw in the last administration, you had cross-dressers in major cabinet positions.
Yeah. And you had guys dressed up like women doing crazy stuff. You know what I like about this book that you have here is at the bottom of each page, you have all your sources and your the footnotes and everything. And I appreciate that. It tells, the reader, hey, you're actually pulling this stuff from real documents in the past. You're not just, making this stuff up. Outcast, that sounds like we have to get this book. All these books he's got a bunch of books, and I'll bring us back over to this one right here. But Outcast, he said a lot there. What's going through your head right now? I mean, does it all fit the agenda?
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of clicks together. It's the finer details where the devil lingers. It's the devil in the details, right? Yeah. And that's what Ben has done here. Ben, I'm reminded of a scripture, and I can't escape it when I'm hearing you talk. And it's kind of what Jesse and I try to do on the show here too, and other people like us that think like us. But it's from Isaiah 62:6, and it says, "I have set watchmen on your walls, Jerusalem. They shall never be silent day or night. You remind the Lord, give yourselves no rest." Right. So there's some scripture right there to say, if you're a watchman on the wall, you're going to have, just day and night, you'll never be silent. Right. And that's what you've chosen to do. They've tried to swat you. They've tried to intimidate you, and you will not be silenced. And I hope they don't do that to me, but more power to you for being so brave and fighting through it and saying, this is my mission here on earth. This is what I'm here to do. You are a watchman. So I just keep thinking of that scripture hearing you talk. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. That means a lot. Appreciate it.
I'm reading over the intro that I brought, your bio, and talk a little bit before you go here about your Liberty Boot Camp. You have these courses. What can the people expect when they go to the treeoflibertysociety.com and check out your boot camp courses?
Yeah. So this originates from the fake pandemic. And when a lot of people were waking up, they looked at what we were doing. We were leading the way and saying, we're not going to obey. Not only are we not going to obey, we're going to be in your face, government, and we're going to disobey you to your face. And so that attracted a lot of people, but they didn't have the foundation. They knew they liked the Constitution. They knew they liked the principles of liberty and the Declaration of the Founding Fathers, but there really was just like whatever they learned from school or television or Schoolhouse Rock, and so I felt that there were other other people have put together Constitution courses, but I really felt that it was really lacking, and it was kind of more of a modernist view of the Constitution. I felt that we needed to go back to what guided the Founding Fathers. What did they read that led them to what they were to do? And so, tongue in cheek, we call it the extremists' liberty boot camp, because they're always going to go after you. Like with the term of conspiracy theory, they'll call you an extremist. I'm just like, hey, I own it. Let's move on. I'm not going to argue if I'm an extremist or not. You want to call me that? Whatever. Let's just move on and let's look at the data. And so I go through and I found the people that the Founding Fathers quoted. What were the principles behind the Declaration of Independence? What were the complaints that they had against the king, comparing it to what's going on today? And then we have another class on this conspiracy on the national level, international, and then on the local level. And then getting into, there's one course on wolves in sheep's clothing. How do we identify people that are pretending to be on our team when they're actually working for the other side and trying to get us to. They're really trying to co-opt, get us to co-opt the liberty movement to make sure that we don't do the right thing, and so you're going to see a lot of stuff that you don't see in any of the other liberty boot camps that are out there, and so really stuff that is something that is unique to what we've been able to put together. It is religious based, and so no matter what religion you are, there are principles that I think we're mature enough. We love liberty. We can say, maybe I don't agree with that religious point of view, but I'm going to say that principle is good, and we can join together on where we agree on those principles, and we don't have to squabble over those individual differences of sex and whatnot, but to move forward together on correct principles.
Yeah. Wow, I really like it. treeoflibertysociety.com. You guys go over there and check it out. Outcast, any last words before Ben heads out?
Ben, I apologize that I jumped on the call a little late and I missed the beginning part. I will listen to it tomorrow. But God bless you, brother. Thanks for your fight. Thanks for your tenacity. Thanks for your thoroughness. The world needs you. We can't say we appreciate you enough for what you're doing. Shedding shedding light into the darkness is what we're all about. And you are living that out right now. And another thing too is, God detests cowardice, and you are not cowardly at all. You are bold, and we need that. So thank you so much. I just hope you just keep uncovering more, and I hope your books get more and more attention so the world can wake up a little faster.
Appreciate chatting with both of you.
Yeah, it's been eye-opening. I mean, I really like the way you broke it all down, Ben. And, I want to tell people, get on over there, treeoflibertysociety.com. Check everything out that Ben's doing, your books, people saying, thanks for coming on the show, Ben. And I want to talk to you again about your daughter. That's a whole nother episode. We have something in common.
Yeah.
And I want you to come back anytime. And there's plenty more we can go on. I want to jump into your books now. I'm going to have to order some and get them going. So we appreciate you, Ben. Okay. Listen, brother, stay dangerous. All right. He's really good.
God bless him. I mean, I don't know. I love it when people can not only sort out the immense amount of data and confusion and then make it digestible for everybody else. That's key. I mean, some people go so deep that it's just an overwhelming web to tangle and untangle. And when you meet somebody who can kind of like give layman terms to kind of help us to wrap our head around it, and then we can go deeper once we understand the big picture.
Yeah.
That's amazing that he's got a talent for that.
He got so much, he got deep into the stuff that we like, on our text threads, and we get into some really deep stuff. We've done it here on the show like that too, but he gets in there, he lays it all out concisely. I sit over here and I stumble over all my words and everything, but I know what I'm trying to say, but he says it effortlessly, right? He says it just, if I could say it that way, that's what I would be doing. But I got to check his books out, and they look like pretty quick reads too. I like that. So that's what I'm into.